So we'll begin with the singers. Come on up. This is the special first edition. It will have a sleeve. It will have a sleeve and its special numbered copies and so on. So the first copy I will give to the one who painted this beautiful painting. The second copy I will give to Cecilia, who paid for the printing. So, come sing. Where are the bases?
Life is a dream. Life is a dream.
I'm not sure I know the notes. Would you start with first?
Are Nakula and Sarah here? Here they are. We're going to sing a little song.
This song I wrote for their wedding. That's why he called for it. Life is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere. Love can befriend you today. Free from all care, like birds on the air, soar above griefs and worries, seek joy and be gay. Often on earth, things of great worth, worldly ambitions defy. Sometimes a friend helps us ascend up from life's cares to the sky. Love is a star, though shining afar. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh. Life is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere. Love can befriend you today. Free from all care, like birds on the air, soar above griefs and worries, seek joy and be gay. Often on earth, things of great worth, worldly ambitions defy. Sometimes a friend helps us ascend up from life's cares to the sky. Love is a star, though shining afar. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh. Love is a star, though shining afar. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw I would like to ask Mr. Cole to come up. Yeah. He will give us a brief 5-minute talk on Gita.
respected and revered Swamiji Maharaj, and brothers and sisters of Ananda, and friends. Today we are here assembled to celebrate the honor of Paramhansa Yogananda's Mahasamadhi and the release of the essence of Bhagavad Gita by revered Swami Kriyananda Ji Maharaj. We have been celebrating this occasion for last 2 days, and we feel as if we are in paradise. Edwin Arnold called Gita as the song celestial. It is a book that is meant to be of help to realize the eternal spiritual reality within all men and women, along with the humanistic objectives. This is the greatest book of practical Vedanta, capable of helping us to create a society of fully developed human beings. In Gita, we have a philosophy that will train people's minds and hearts in a direction of welfare society based on human dignity, freedom, and equality. In Gita Dhyan Shlokas, which I do not find here in this Gita, but you will find in most of the versions that is first there, we find this idea beautifully described in this Dhyan Shlokas. The Gita is compared to milk taken out of cow, meaning Vedas, by Sri Krishna, the milkman. This milk is not meant for worship, but is meant to be drunk for our nourishment. Then alone we can get strength. But all these hundreds of years, we took the glass of milk, worshipped with flowers, incense, and whatnot, but we saluted it, but we never drank it. That's why we are feeble physically, mentally, and socially. This will change if we start drinking the milk and assimilate it. This will help us to develop character, strength, work efficiency, and spirit of service. The purpose of the book is to inspire all men and women of responsibility to work for good of all. It is not meant for putting us to sleep. It is meant to wake us up. It gives us tremendous humanistic impulse and resolve to work for the good of the whole society. Today, Swamiji has given us this essence of Bhagavad Gita in the form of sweet and easily digestible milk. Just as Tulsi Das gave us Ramchandra Mansa many years back, and he made it so simple that common folk could understand it, and today it has become almost the Bhagavad Gita of Hindi-speaking people. Similarly, Swamiji has given us a sweet and simple commentary on this Gita, and I am sure it will be in everybody's hands. There are no such big bombastic words there. A person who has the basic knowledge of 500 words of English can assimilate it. This essence of Gita is suitable for 21st century, the age of cell phone, internet, iPod, and God knows what is going to come. I purchased one iPod in UK. Before I came to India, it was out of date. This book is like a manual for human computer of body, mind, and soul, so that we can get all the functions for which we were born in this world. Friends, I purchased a small cell phone, and they gave me the first edition user's guide. And I'm not even now today aware how to use this whole guide. And I can't have all the functions of my small, that little phone. And here is this book, which Swamiji has written. This is a guidebook for how to live our life on this earth. And I'm sure we should have this book in every home. Every child should get it, because we have pressed some wrong buttons, that's why we are in misery. This book tells us which button to press, which not to press. My son has a computer and he is sometimes very tense. What he has done, he has pressed a wrong button and it won't function. He tries his best, he dissects it, he trisects it, he puts new parts, he puts bad parts, he is in temper. Gentlemen, we are also in temper because we didn't have this guidebook. The day we know that we have a guidebook, it will tell us how to lead every day's life, day-to-day life. We won't press any wrong button. And our computer, this human body, mind, soul, will work in perfect order. Thank you. The Gita is a heroic message from heroic teacher to a heroic pupil. And today we have the same Gita from a heroic teacher. This is the best book of practical Vedanta for our daily life. Swamiji, I can see it with the spark of my divine eye, that soon this essence of Bhagavad Gita will be translated in most of the language of the world, and a copy of it will be available in most of the homes in the world. This will bring peace, tranquility in the world. If UN wants an everlasting peace in this world, then they should take up this project on urgent basis. I do not see that day is very far. Swamiji, your name shall be worshipped in every home where there is your Gita. This I am saying not because I want to say, but for this I have got blessings. I have got blessings of my grandfather, who was one of the very well-known saints of Kashmir, and he was incidentally also a Christian Bhakta. My father also blessed me, and he was a worshipper of Shakti, the energy, what we call it today. He was a great worshipper of a goddess, Mother. Swamiji Maharaj, I came across the book of the life of Yogananda long back. I was in Germany in '57. And that time there was a little problem, and I wrote to him. I did not know he is no longer there. But I did receive a reply. They said that we have kept the name in our prayer book, and probably you were the author, but I don't have that letter because you were that time there associated with writing and receiving mail. I am really thrilled, and today, after so many years, we are together again, Maharaj. The Gita was first translated into English by Sir Charles Wilkins and published by British East India Company with the introduction by Warren Hastings, the first of Governor-Generals of India. He said, the writers of Indian philosophy will survive when the British dominion of India shall long have ceased to exist, and when the sources which yielded this wealth of power are lost to remembrance. And today it is true. British are no longer there, but the book is there. Our philosophy is ever growing, ever growing. A century later, another beautiful rendering of Gita in English appeared, namely the song Celestial by Sir Edwin Arnold. The Bhagavad Gita deals with human problems in a human way. It has been inspiring millions of people in various parts of the world. Thinkers, writers like Emerson, Walt Whitman, Thoreau in USA, and Carlyle in England experienced this broadening and deepening of their outlook after studying Gita, and their writings began to convey a new meaning. And I am sure with the Gita that we have today, with this commentary, from today on, our life will also have a different meaning. It will have deeper meaning. It will have holistic meaning, and our behavior towards our own self, our families, our friends, and world at large will be quite different from what it has been today. For the first time in 8th century, this book was taken out of the mighty epic Mahabharata by Shankaracharya, who wrote the first commentary in Sanskrit and placed it before people. Till then, it had been lost in Bhishma Parana, and the great glory of Shankaracharya was his preaching of Gita. This was followed by Janeshwari in Marathi, and that was written by Saint Janeshwar. In modern times, Lokmanya Tilak wrote his great book, the Gita Rahasya, in 2 volumes when he was imprisoned by the British in Melandery jail in Burma. This was a remarkable book that he didn't have any references. Whatever he wrote from his memory. There is a blessing inbuilt in this Gita, Maharaj. As soon as the books are out, they are sold. This has happened so many times in the history of Gita. And I request you, Swamiji, to be prepared, because you will be receiving orders for millions and millions of copies. It will be...
I believe it.
Because it has happened every time.
Thank you. You know, we should go on, I think.
I will go to the last page.
Okay.
Just concluding. One would like to talk for hours, but time is not. Swamiji, we are blessed through your kindness, as Lord Krishna assures us that even that man who hears this full of Shraddha and free from malice, he too is liberated and shall attain the happy world of the righteous. The Bhagavad Gita that you have given is a combination of jnana, yoga, and tapas. It's a holistic approach. Your commentary is as deep as ocean and as broad as sky.
Thank you very kindly.
Swamiji, I'm telling you personal experience, there's a lot of power in your Gita, Maharaj. I took the copy to my home. Believe me, I was tossing in my bed, I could not sleep. So I got up, and for the whole night, I was studying your book.
I thought you were going to say it put you to sleep.
No! It woke me up. Now for these right angles, I am sure that one day Dharamdas and Nirmala, who are important pillars of Ananda Sangh, will render Bhagavad Gita to beautiful, melodious, and soul-elevating musical form, and we'll have all the lovely nightingales from US singing the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like Preeti to come up. I should begin by saying that right now with the Gita out, it's time for us to find land to really build our institute, our community. Please come, Preeti.
I'll just ask Nirmala to give a cough if I kind of exceed my time.
Don't be too close to it or you'll get it, honey.
Okay. Some time ago, we had a party in the ashram, and I was chatting with Lipa, and we were just, she asked me what I did, and I said I'm into real estate in a vague way. And she told me, we're looking for land, and she got me to talk to Miriam, who then put me on to Haridas and Roma. And I took that very seriously because I'd heard about Swamiji's special mission, and I'd heard so much about the wonderful colonies they have in the States, and I felt that we need not just a place where people can withdraw, but a place, an oasis from which energy can be sent out to the others like me who really need this kind of stuff here. Very excited, I ran around. Gurgaon, as you know, is a boom town as far as real estate is concerned. It's something like what California was in the mid-80s, mid-18th century. So 5 beautiful parcels of land, which were sort of, affordable. And I said, if it's a colony, then they look at about at least 100 acres. So with that, we had these 5 parcels sorted out. And we honed in on one, because when I spoke to Haridas, I said, what kind of place? He says, we have to go there, and then Swamiji has to go there, and the vibrations have to be right. And I said, oh, that's a bit difficult, I mean, how does one kind of isolate that? Then there was one parcel that I was shown, and I went there. There were 300 acres, and we could pick whatever we wanted out of that. It was a pretty enough drive. We got there, got out of the car, and looked at endless fields rolling away. And I said, no, there's something wrong. And I just turned around, and there was this beautiful stretch of land with a very picturesque hill, with a metal road going all the way to the top, a very nice pond there. And I said, this is it. Came back, and the following week we took Roma and Haridas there. They loved it. We went up to the hill, we took pictures, and this whole deal was being driven by the headman of that village. So he insisted that we go to his place. Roma and Haridas went there, and in fact, we walked down, and there were these peacocks, and there were, it was just fascinating for them, monkeys around. And so we went to his mother's house, and we sat in the courtyard, and the water was brought out. And Roma, God bless her, was so embarrassed at, embarrassing them or saying no, that she was ready to drink it, and I had to take it away from her. I said, no, I'll do the drinking. And that's something that happens, that whenever I go out with them, I drink a lot of water on their behalf. So it was beautiful. There was this, people were curious about them, and it just seemed so right. Now, the interesting thing about this land per se was that not only did we have the option to pick up some acres, but because the headman was driving the deal, he wanted to see in what way we could collaborate and contribute to the upliftment of that village. And the first thing he said was, there's this 12-acre school site which had been given 18 years ago to a society, a foundation, which, the driving force behind that foundation had just passed away last year. And so we had these children there that were they were finding it very difficult to sustain that school. So he said, we'll sign this over to you, and you can, run it. And then he also, as bait, I felt, for picking up that land, he says, we have 131 acres of land which belongs to the panchayat, which you can do, as long as you do something for the upliftment of the village, we'll hand it over to you. Very excited. So I came back and did some number crunching, and I presented it to Haridas, and he said, oh, when he saw the figures. So then I said, okay, tell me, what kind of budget do you have in mind? He said, we don't, we work things differently. Once we see something, we put all our energies behind it, and we go at it, and miracles happen. I said, but surely we have something to go on, this is... But he gave me a couple of stories of how things happened here and there, and I'm a believer, but I had work to do. So anyway, that kind of fizzled out. Then Nirmala and Dharamdas wanted to see it. Some developers had come from Hawaii, so we took it there. They loved it. And we discussed all kinds of possibilities, but again, we felt that the numbers simply didn't match. So I dropped that, and then I knew that other people were looking at that land, and I showed it to a couple of other people, but this stayed with me, that this is so right for Ananda. And then Roma mentioned the other day, she says, Santoshi happens to be here with the children, and she's also into real estate, and so we put our heads together, met Santoshi, and she gave me spiel similar to Haridas's, that, no budget, vibrations, and it will happen, and... So then I said, while I was sitting with her, I said, let me ask that person. I picked up the phone and I called him. I said, look, these people don't have any money. But tell us how we can do something so that they can get that 131 acres and they can get this school, and you will not regret it. And what is the minimum amount that they have to buy? So he said, in Hindi, let them take 5 or 10 acres. So I put the phone down and I told Santoshi, I said, you're going to want to hug me after this. She said, I'll give you a hug anyway. She gave me a hug. And then when I told her, she says, hug. So then Nirmala, Santoshi and I went. We wanted Dharamdas to come. We wanted some male strength, but we put it to Swamiji, of course. And he gave us the green signal. He says, go see what you can do. It sounds exciting. So we went and we met these people, and things just seemed to be getting better. Now, the point is, I would normally not have, since things are not totally fructified we wouldn't have sort of been out here mentioning this, but this is another learning experience as far as I'm concerned. I think Devi mentioned it day before yesterday to the congregation, and we went yesterday and things just got better. There is possibility of us getting that land at the circle rate, which, believe it or not, is a pittance, it's throwaway. So we're working on various options there. But the reason why we're sharing this with you is that your prayers, your energies should come to bear on this, and hopefully we will have a beautiful place where Swamiji's vision of this colony in India, as well as the institute that he's planning, where all these things come together to bear fruit. So your prayers, please, for this venture, and we are sure that things will really work out well here. Thank you.
Yes, one more.
Many hands.
Many hands make a miracle. Let's all join hands together. Life on earth is so wonderful when people laugh and dance and struggle as friends, and all their dreams achieve their ends. Many hands make a miracle. People climbing together. Soon we reach to the pinnacle of every mountain peak we hazard as one. We lift our hands to welcome the sun. Many hands make a miracle. Let's all join hands together. Life on earth is so wonderful when people laugh and dance and struggle as friends, and all their dreams achieve their ends. Many hands make a miracle. People climbing together. Soon we reach to the pinnacle of every mountain peak we hazard as one. We lift our hands to welcome the sun. We lift our hands to welcome the sun.
What? Yes, I will. Thank you. I'd like a drink, water. Somebody bring me a glass of water. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Well, my gosh, I'm up here all alone. Thank you, Mr. Cole, very much. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you all for singing so beautifully. And that last song says it all. The way that Ananda has been built has been many hands making a miracle. There was a time, back in 1976, when a forest fire, this was the danger up at the village, living in the foothills of the Sierra Mountains, which get very dry in summer. There was a danger always of forest fire, there always is. But this particular fire devastated 450 of our, at that time we had only 750 acres, now we have 1,000. Destroyed 21 of our 22 homes. We had no insurance, and it looked as if we could not possibly succeed. At that time, it was discovered that the fault of the fire had been a government vehicle. And our neighbors were all excited. They said, we can sue the county and get all our money back. And in fact, they launched a lawsuit and were paid before the case went to court and got their money back. I wrote a letter to the county supervisors. We always believe, yata dharma tata jaya. And we did not feel it was dharmic to take our bad fortune out on other people. And so I said that I know that you're concerned because we were the biggest losers in that fire, but we will not sue you. I'm sure that for years they waited for the second shoe to fall, but it never did. And somehow we were able to survive and thrive. And every time we faced a great disaster, and we've had many, everybody pitching in, everybody working together, many hands have produced this miracle. And so it is that the Gita is perhaps our greatest miracle of all. At least I can say personally it is mine, because for many years I've dreamed of getting it out, and I thought it would take me 10 years. And at my age, 10 years is a very iffy proposition. And I was able, with God's grace, to do it in less than 2 months. Well, yesterday I talked about the Gita as allegory. There's another very important aspect of it, and that is that the Gita is completely in tune with modern science. In fact, it explains things that you can only really understand today, that you know what the findings of science is, you know the view that we have of the universe, which people couldn't have had before. But you know, even back in 1894, Swami Sri Yukteswar, in his book, The Holy Science, wrote that matter is energy. It wasn't discovered until 11 years later, in 1905, science declared matter is energy. How did this universe come into being? He explained it. Science has made it clear in its own way. He's made it even clearer, and the Gita makes it very clear. When God created the universe, I mentioned this briefly yesterday, He did not have a lot of atoms to put together. He didn't have anything. He had only His consciousness. And in that consciousness, He visualized, He dreamed. And just as your dreams seem very real to you when you're asleep at night, I remember many years ago, I dreamed I was flying. And I thought, well, this is such a strange thing to be doing. I must be dreaming. So I tried to reason it out as to whether I was dreaming or awake. And I finally came to the very and complete logical conclusion that in fact I was awake, I was only doing something unusual. What was my surprise a moment later to wake up and find that it had all really been a dream. So this world, which seems so real to logic, so real to our senses, so real to all the reasoning we can apply, when we wake up in God, we see it was all a dream. The way God created this universe was to visualize thoughts. Everything was created in ideational form, in thought form. And in that, all the seeds were there, but it was not formulated in a solid form. Then God, after that stage had been reached, and that's a whole universe. It's a level of our body, a causal body. There's also a whole causal universe. Once that was formed, then God vibrated a portion of it more grossly in the form of energy, and that is the astral world and the astral body. And finally, when that was good, you might say, when it was working well, then God projected energy further into the form of matter, as we call it. Matter, however, and science has declared this today, is only energy. I used the example of a propeller yesterday. We can take an even more commonly known one, a fan. When you see a fan, you see separate blades, and you see space between them. But once the fan is turning, you see nothing but a solid disk. And so, that energy moving fast enough produces the appearance and even the sensation on all levels, touch, feeling, smell, taste, everything, of solidity. But it is not any more real than just the dreams you have at night. Dreams, Swami Sri Yukteswar said, are actually the first step that a person goes through to start thinking, dreams seem so real and yet they aren't. Maybe this world, which seems so real, is also not real. Because you know, in your own experience, there are things that happen and you ask yourself, am I dreaming? It doesn't seem real. There are many dream-like aspects about life. You can't clearly remember what happened yesterday. You can't clearly remember what you were thinking 5 minutes ago. It sort of comes and goes, and it's sort of like forms appearing out of mist and disappearing again. Such is life. It is a dream. And we have to wake up to the reality behind that dream. And so one of the basic things in the Gita and a cornerstone of Yogananda's teachings is about the subject of energy. The cornerstone of his teachings is energization, learning how to energize the body. This is the beginning of yoga, because yoga is not just controlling of breath. Breath is incidental. Energy is what causes the breath. And yoga explains it much better than science does. Yoga is far in advance of science in these fields. Yoga cannot produce electronic gadgets, but it can produce and help to explain the most wonderful electronic gadget of all, the human body. How this body functions. In the astral world, the Ida and the Pingala are two nerve nadis, I should say, that circulate around the spine. And they are the breathing of the astral body. And in this body we find it actually happens when, and we are much more yogis than people realize. You know, people say that heaven is up above and hell is down below. People on the other side of the world, it's the same thing is true. It isn't as if heaven were up there. What is up for us is down for people on the other side of the world. But it is true for every human body, and everybody knows it. I suspect, without knowing all languages, that in every language there is an expression for I feel up, I feel high, I feel uplifted, something that indicates an uprising of energy and consciousness. Or I feel depressed, I feel low, I feel downcast, I feel heavy. All these are the heaven and hell in the human body. We have come up in the vertebra, the animal form has finally taken a shape where there is an ascent of energy or a descent of energy. And this ascent is partly indicated by the Ida and the Pingala nadis, the energy in those. When you feel good about something, isn't it so? And when you feel bad, and when a baby is first born, its first breath, so it can take that first cry, and then it cries. That's really when the horoscope should be written, at that moment. And when a person dies, there's the breath is taken out of the body. These are universal facts, and it's not as if Christians say, well, we believe the opposite. You can't. It's not as if people in Borneo say, well, we believe that actually we're happiest when we're down below. A dog may feel that way, sort of wagging his tail. But that isn't the way things are. And so it is that science has begun to make open and ready for us. It's so interesting that for centuries, science and religion considered themselves enemies, rivals. But now, in fact, yoga says, don't believe. The criterion of being a good Christian is credo, I believe. Well, the answer to that is that people used to believe the world was flat, but it's not. Your beliefs don't tell you. It's your experience that tells you. Yoga says you must experience. And the experience of man is that when we can raise our consciousness, and Ida and Pingala and Kriya Yoga, again and again in the Gita, it talks about Kriya Yoga. Mind you, Kriya simply means action. So what is Kriya Yoga? We have to say, if we want to be exact, that Kriya Yoga, as we understand it, is the Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahasaya Benares, of Varanasi. Because that Kriya Yoga deals not with, there are Navi Kriyas, there are all sorts of Kriyas, but the real Kriya Yoga that he taught, and he used a very simple word, but it has to do with the universal truth. Everybody, when he dies, and it's amazing when you read the Gita, how many things Krishna teaches in the Gita simply to prepare you for the moment of death. The moment of death is the most important time in your life. It's your final exam. When you die, then all that you have done comes together. I had a very interesting conversation with one of the monks in SRF when I was there. He said that he had come to the path because he had had the experience of nearly dying. He was in water and just going down for the third time, and somebody was able to rescue him. But as he went down for the third time, suddenly he saw his entire life. And he remembered all the good things and all the bad things. And the strange thing he said was that many things that I thought were good were not good. Many things I thought were important were not at all important. Many things that I could not see as important in my own mind were crucial in my life. And so most people think of the important as what gets them ahead in business, what makes them successful in school, what makes them good friends, etc. But all our actions are judged from a point of view of Dharma. And those things that have taken you closer to living truth, those are what lift you. And those things that take you away from truth, they take you down. There is no such thing as an eternal hell. This is just a human misconception of the truth. It's inconceivable that God would, if you are familiar with the picture of the Last Judgment of Michelangelo above the altar in the Sistine Chapel in Rome, you get a picture of God as being thoroughly furious with the damned and really not paying much attention to the poor saved. All this energy went in damning people for eternity. I just have thought about supposing a young boy grows up in a slum and he has no friends except people who join gangs and fight and so on, and he doesn't know any better, and by the age of 18, by mistake perhaps, he shoots somebody and kills him. And at the age of 19, maybe in a gang war, he gets killed. And so by normal theology, he goes to hell, right? Well, just think about this eternal hell business. 2 billion years down the road. Mind you, 2 billion years is just a snap of the finger in terms of eternity. Somebody says to him, well, what are you down here for? And he says, well, gee, I don't really quite remember. A finite cause cannot have an infinite effect. It's an absurdity, philosophically, logically, any other way you want to look at it. And in fact, the Indian teachings say that there is such a thing as hell, but it's temporary. And in fact, people live in hell or in heaven right here in this world. Our job as yogis is to help people, to ourselves as well, live in heaven right now. But as you die, that moment will come clear. It's not as if you could figure it all out and beat the game. Okay, my last thought is important, so never mind how I think. I'll just focus on that last thought. It's sort of like a dacoit who had done many wrong things, killed many people, stolen from many people, but he figured it out. This is a true story, at least it was told to me as a true story, that he would go to Varanasi, go to Benares, and he would live there until he died. And he broke his legs, cut off his legs, so that he couldn't do anything, he couldn't move. And he just sat there waiting for death, and then he would be saved because he had died in Kashi. And so one day, he saw a young person riding a horse, and he said, you call that riding? Why, without these legs I could ride better than that. And he had somebody put him up on that horse, and the horse bolted, went just beyond the Varuna and dumped him and broke his neck. Well, whether that can be taken as happening to everybody, I doubt. Nor do I necessarily believe that dying in Benares will bring you that. It may not. However, the truth of it is that you have to die in that consciousness, and to create that consciousness, all life is a preparation for that final exam. Now in Kriya Yoga, first let me say that the currents of energy in the spine they're related to your uplifted feelings and downcast feelings, but it's not as if every time you inhale, this would be pretty ridiculous. Nonetheless, there is an upward movement, and if you use that upward movement, inhaling consciously, you can accomplish more in making affirmations and so on. But the thing with Kriya Yoga is that what you try to do is neutralize the spine and magnetize it so the energy can enter into the deep spine, the Sushumna. And then is when Kundalini awakening begins. And with that awakening, there's a great joy that comes. And the path goes on from there. I remember saying to my guru one time talking about how I was feeling Kundalini rising, and I was feeling quite pleased with myself. So to stop me from being pleased with myself, he said, that's nothing. Well, it's a beginning only, you see. If you're trying to reach college level, then learning 1 + 1 makes 2 is nothing. It's a lot for a little baby who doesn't know that 1 even exists, or maybe only 1 himself. And so it is that Kriya Yoga, by neutralizing the Ira and the Pingala nadis, the energy in those two, it brings this energy into the self. Now, this is the scientific aspect of yoga, which could not be told until people understood that energy exists. This is one reason Kriya Yoga was not given broadly. But again and again, this Krishna says in the Gita that this is the essence of all sadhana and all yoga. And if you read my Gita, as I'm sure all of you will see that this is central to the teaching, which has been almost ignored in the past because people didn't know what it was talking about. In fact, I noticed several times in writing the Gita that I had 8 different translations and had others that I referred to also. And I noticed again and again that people would, if there was a difficult stanza, I would notice that they would go from stanza 8 to stanza 12. What happened to 9 and 10 and 11? They just conveniently drop it out and hope you didn't notice. Because there are some slokas in the Gita that are very difficult. Only a yogi could understand them, but our guru, being a yogi, could understand it. I mean, take that passage, for example, where it speaks of the north course of the sun, the bright half of the moon. What are you going to talk about there? What are you going to make of it? You know, an interesting thing is that ego, as I told you yesterday, is centered in the medulla oblongata. And that's why when people are egotistical, there's a tension here which causes them to look at everything down their nose. And you notice a proud expression is this way. It's just an automatic thing. People are more yogis than they realize. Why is a bow universal throughout the world an indication of humility? It means that it's a relaxing of the energy here and offering it. And every country has this. I don't know of a single culture that expresses respect for somebody else by I can't imagine it. So we see that this moon, the moon astrologically is represented by this Ajna Chakra, the medulla. You see in Shiva, the moon is here. The meaning of that is symbolic. It means he's enlightened. A master is enlightened. Now in the Gita, a very interesting thing is told. That is that the Gita at that time, he said, this yoga has been lost what he meant was the descending age. The greater teachings are no longer available. And Krishna came at a time when the age was getting darker and darker and darker. This thought of cyclic time is a very interesting one. And again, it can be justified more easily in terms of modern science than it could have been many centuries ago. In fact, many teachers today even believe that you go from Satya Yoga to Treta Yoga to Dwapara Yoga to Kali Yoga, and suddenly, poof, back to Satya Yoga again. That doesn't make sense. There's nothing in nature that suggests that things are not cyclic. You find day becoming dusk before it becomes night, becoming twilight before it becomes dawn, and the day begins. The sun goes up, becomes brighter and brighter, then darker and darker. Winter goes slowly through spring to summer, slowly back through autumn to winter. Everything in life is cyclic. And what my Param Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, explained is that there is a grand central sun, and our planet is rotating around another star. Our solar system is rotating around a dual. And as we come closer to the center of the galaxy, there is a great power coming out of that, a spiritual power. And from that, as we come closer to it, more energy enters this planet and people become more automatically able to understand. A little thing struck my mind because I went across the Atlantic many times when I was a child. My parents were American, but they lived in Romania. And so every 3 years we would have a vacation and we would go back to America. And I didn't remember the first time I traveled particularly well. I was 6 months old. But the next time, 3 years old, and then 7, and then 9, and 13, each time I would notice that when another ship came towards us from a distance, it isn't as if it began as a little speck on the horizon, gradually becoming bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally saw the shape of a ship and a mast and so on. Not at all. You would see nothing, and then you'd see a mast. Then a little bit more, you'd begin to see the top of the ship, and then you'd see the whole ship. Now, why was it? I've often asked myself. So many thousands of people had seen that phenomenon on the ocean, and no one had ever come up with the thought that the world was round. Isn't it odd? It just seems like a perfectly logical conclusion that there's some explanation for why you see only part of the ship and gradually more and more, instead of a speck in the distance, like a bird in the sky, gradually becoming bigger and bigger until you see an eagle flapping its wings. Little things like this help one to become aware that people were not ready to see those things. Now everybody would notice it. Now many scientific truths are common parlance today because people can understand them, which a few decades, a few centuries ago were not so easily understood. Man is awakening. And in that process, what Swami Sri Yukteswar explained was this, that as our solar system rotates and comes closer to the center of the galaxy, there is a gradual awakening of energy until it comes to the closest point, and then as it retreats from that center, energy becomes darker and darker and darker till it reaches a nadi in the depth of Kali Yoga. This is descending Kali Yoga. Then there is an ascending Kali Yoga, and Kali Yoga goes to Dwapara Yoga. Kali means dark age. Dwapara simply means second age, but it means an age of energy. Treta Yoga is an age of mental ability, mental power. And Satya Yoga, also known as Krita Yoga, is an age of spiritual awakening. Now this whole universe it's a fascinating thing. My guru explained in his Gita that there are whole galaxies that are primarily sattvic or primarily rajasic or primarily tamasic. Whole universes, you might say, well, how could anybody know that? The thing is that when you achieve oneness with God, you are everywhere. There's no question of Him having to travel there. You become omnipresent because you become one with God. And so it is that this particular galaxy we're in is a Rajasic galaxy. And it seems like it ought to mean something, that the fact that our solar system is on the outskirts of that, of the whole galaxy. Kind of scary, you might think. Does that mean we're pretty close to Tamoguna? I don't know. I don't think so. Because although I see a lot of darkness in this world, I see increasing spiritual development. And that calls up a little thought also. Because I have been teaching now spiritual truths all over the world for nearly 60 years. That's a fair length of time in one human life. And I have to say that in that length of time, I have seen an awakening. The people that I used to talk to back in 1949, they're very different today in 2006. I see that there is an awakening of understanding, of appreciation. It isn't just that they've learned more. There is more openness. I used to, in Connaught Circus, I lived here from 58 to 62 in India, and I spent a lot of that time in Delhi. I used to see people in Connaught Circus, and I towered a whole head above everybody. Now I'm sort of looking up at them, hoping they won't step on me. The truth is that Indians today are much taller. Now you may say that it's a question of diet. Maybe it is, I don't know. But this is one of the symptoms of Dwapara Yoga, that people become taller, and they become taller in each yoga. They also live longer, and I find that people today are living a lot longer. People of 80 a few years ago you practically had to write them off. And here I am 80 and moderately sane and able to get from here to there. There's a definite shift in the way length of people's lives, in the health that they endure, in the height of their bodies. There's a great change. All of these are symptoms of coming into a yoga where there's more energy, and so people understand and can handle themselves better. We're only at the beginning of Dwapara Yoga. In 1900, Swami Sri Yukteswar organized a parade through Sirampur and to announce the arrival of Dwapara proper. It came in 1700, but that was a 200-year Shandhya or bridge. 1900 exactly was the beginning of Dwapara Yoga. So he organized this parade, and people were throwing rocks at them. This is nonsense. It's all Kali Yuga. But none of the symptoms of Kali Yuga are here today. There's a story that Hans Christian Andersen wrote. He said that you think nostalgically about medieval times, and he visualized, he imagined somebody going to sleep and waking up several hundred years ago in the middle of the medieval times and having to stumble about in dark streets, potholes, mud everywhere. It was an altogether different life, and not at all the kind of life that you and I would weave any kind of romance about. Nowadays we find that these things are normal. We don't even think of that as a normal thing. We have changed. Yes, there has been warfare. Yes, there is more violence and so on. This is the negative side of it, but it's not as negative as it seems for this reason, that people, when they develop more freedom, then they they abuse their freedom until they understand, and they have to understand in time, that to abuse your freedom ultimately is to destroy your freedom. A young man may say, oh, I can take drugs, I'm perfectly free to take as many drugs as I want. Another one may say, oh, I'm perfectly free to get as drunk as I want. The trouble is they soon find out that instead of being free, they're becoming less and less free. This was one of the great flaws in the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. He said, mankind is radically free, and he based his entire philosophy on that belief. Well, at the end of a totally ridiculous series of sort of throwing dust in your eyes, he concluded, therefore, man is radically free. Well, that was like trying to fly a flag from a pole that didn't exist. He should have made that his final proof, which he never proved at all. The fact is, we are free to be as stupid or as intelligent as we want to be. And if you want to be stupid and if you want to act wrongly, you will find yourself less and less free. Now, Jyotish, could you bring me a chair? Yesterday I wanted to sit down sooner, but now I want to sit down. And so man's freedom depends on... Okay, I better... All of you will be watching the chair. I better... Thank you. Okay. And this gives me a chance to have a little water. Thank you. So the thing is that we see that in the advancement of, even in my short lifetime, there is a change. People are showing more understanding, the awareness of the oneness of the world. There are some mechanical reasons for it, for sure. But nonetheless, it's incredible how this world has changed. Back in 1949, which for me is just yesterday, the Popular Science Monthly in America predicted that someday the computer may weigh as little as 1 ton. In 1979, the president of IBM said that computers will never be in the home. how things have changed with microchips and everything. It's just a different world today. And this is only the beginning. We're just at the beginning of Dwapara. Yes, it's true that with energy people can abuse that energy, but more and more people are beginning to understand. And I've done my best through my books, through Hope for a Better World, through Out of the Labyrinth, especially those two books, to show that there are certain rules in this universe which cannot be broken. You cannot say that I am radically free and therefore I can eat glass. Your body is made in a certain way, and to be free you have to keep your body well. And that includes rules such as don't eat glass. You don't need to make a rule about it because it's too obvious. But we are discovering rules of diet. It's being discovered that eating meat is not good for you, especially veal, pork, and beef. These have always been said. In India, they've said not to eat beef. In the Islamic and Hermetic countries, Hebraic countries, they have said don't eat pork. Both of those are unclean animals. My guru said he went into abattoirs and saw them actually scooping cancers out of the cows when they killed them. This is a truth. But people are more and more coming to understand the importance of living according to the laws of this body. And if you live according to the laws of the body, then you feel well. It's as simple as that. You become free when you obey the rules. So we see that the rules are not something that a government imposes. They're not something society says you mustn't do it, and other people outside that society can just go do what they want because they believe differently. There are rules of human behavior. For example, first of all, never has a great master ever said, "My children, for a change, hate one another. For a change, shoot one another." They don't say it because it is a truth which people learn as they become a little bit refined. Not that the police will get you if you shoot. After all, you can hate people without getting the police on your back. But by hating other people, you begin to be unhappy. One person said to me many years ago about Ananda, "You have some wonderful people here." I said, "Listen, if there were one or two people like that, you could call them wonderful people. But when you see everybody is like that, then you have to say it's because of what they are doing." But it's so much easier to be pleasant, so much easier to respect other people, so much easier to give them a chance and give them the credit and not try to claim it all for yourself. So much easier to enjoy with everybody instead of trying to shine alone. Many hands make a miracle. And this, when people live together and live in that way, and they have produced the miracle of Ananda, and it really is a miracle. When so many people can work together in harmony and love and care for one another, then you have the germs of a new society. I have often said that 100 years from now, people will look back on what we are doing today, and they will say that was the most important thing that was happening. Not the visits of President Bush to India and the peace treaties with China and Pakistan and all that, those pass. But when you see a few people who live in a way that other people say, "I like this, I want to be like that." More and more, now we have 1,000 people living in our communities. I think it's going to be 1 million before long. And I have many times said here in India, and I want very much to begin this, if we can get a few model communities of people, and in America and in India, in the West, they're all autonomous. It's not as if there was some one head office telling the others what to do. Each community is a little bit different because they can decide for themselves. But the essence of it, in developing leadership, in developing the community even, I didn't worry about what everybody was doing. I didn't even worry if people were negative. I just concentrated on those who were positive. Gradually, the negative people either left or became absorbed in that positive spirit. But with the leaders, I didn't worry so much what they did, because I knew that what they did would be right if they were right. If they had harmony and respect for others and were humble, I never gave positions of leadership to to people who wanted to be leaders. I've always given it to people who were serviceful and wanted to include others and help others. When you find a group of people like that, you know that what they do will be right because it will be dharmic. And so India, I think, it's the right thing for India. It's the right thing for the world. But the beautiful thing about India is it has that philosophy which gives it a basis. If I were to try this in Sicily, I don't know if it would work. Perhaps too many mafiosi, I don't know. But I have got it going in Italy, and we have good people coming from Sicily. It's a wonderful thing to see that when people can get together and be harmonious, that before very long they're not acting the way you find them acting in business offices, in corporations and so on. Everybody trying to push everybody else aside and get to the top. My philosophy is, what the hell does it matter to be at the top? Except you get more brickbats thrown at you. It's not a place of honor, it's a place of service. The role of a leader is to serve others. And the way to make good leaders is to encourage them in what they're doing and not worry about every little thing. I have found over the years that in this way they have grown. And in fact, I felt free to leave America for Italy when I saw that all the decisions they were making were just what I would have made. And Italy, I found they were making all the decisions I would have made. It was time for me to move on. And when I came here to India 3 years ago, I feel this is what I want here. Just think, we have this land that we're looking at in a village nearby. It's a wonderful thing. I think that, they want to give us 131 acres, at least this is the initial plan, for a mere $1,000, not an acre, for the whole thing. Well, that's not so bad, is it? They say that they can help us to get a government loan for 30 years without interest to build an institute. Well, I have great plans for an institute that would embrace all fields and give them all meaning. I believe that in India, our work can be many times what it has been in the West. I feel that there is an infinite amount that we can do. But look at the average village. What is a village? The hallmark of village consciousness, unfortunately, is gossip. What's he doing? What's he doing? What are you doing? It is human nature. But it doesn't have to be. And when people get together for an ideal and for a spiritual purpose, we have these communities already in the West, and they're functioning and they're thriving. And yes, people make mistakes because it's human nature to make mistakes. But the thing that you find is that when people make a mistake, they don't push them down by gossip. They try to help them. That is the hallmark of a spiritual community, that when somebody errs, you try to lift him. You try to give him the encouragement and the faith in himself to grow. And some people make it, some people don't. But there is no judgment. That is what can make a really harmonious spiritual community. This kind of village is what I would love to start and see happen here in India. There's another thing, this village here, they want our coming to be for their good. Well, of course it should be that. This is human nature. But we would like to help them. Indeed, in fact, I would like through them to get that same kind of help everywhere. There is somebody who has invented solar energy in America that with mirrors and an old Stirling engine, which is 200 years old already, but harnessing all the heat from the sun. And there's plenty of sun in this country. Even in monsoon, there's lots of sun every day. It's not like long, all-day rain. But if you could get one unit, it would give the electricity needed by 10 homes. A field of these could keep a whole village of thousands in all the energy that they need. They don't need wires across the country to some central point where it's constantly failing. You know yourselves, I don't have to tell you, that the electricity, even here in Gurgaon, is by no means stable. Hours go by and there's no electricity, and suddenly it comes on again. So you see generators everywhere. And so we have battery backups. When the generator exhausts itself, then the battery backup comes. This wouldn't need any of that. I think that could be a marvelous thing here. It's one of the things I would like to start. I would like to bring that village up into a modern community. So yes, I would like to help that village. And I think through them we can help villages all over the country. 700,000 of them, why not? But we have to begin with examples. And so we are now in Dwapara Yuga. I cannot believe that energy will be always oil dependent, because there's only so much oil in the ground, but there's plenty of energy in the air and the wind and the sun. Certainly we are moving. If this were not Dwapara Yuga, I'd say, okay, we'll go back to the medieval ages, but it isn't. It's Dwapara. Things will come up. They are coming up. And in fact, President Bush recently launched a whole movement toward creating alternate sources of energy. I would like to be a part of that. You know, I find that every big thing that's been done spiritually, a very good example is Satya Paul, who has created something like 80 schools. But he was an industrialist, a very wealthy industrialist, who put all his money in those schools. I think that's the nicest and cleanest way to do it. Make that money yourself and then use it. If people want to donate, great. But I'd like to not have to be dependent on that and just go ahead and generate it. I've started a course called Material Success Through Yoga Principles, and that's bringing money on all sides. I think it's a very good course, and it can help people to become successful. People who have studied are very, very pleased with it. But the point is that this can also be our industry. It can help build many things. Right now we have something like $60,000 to $100,000 in America just sitting there, money from this course sitting there to be used to build community here in India. We can take a mortgage on our house here in Gurgaon. That would be enough probably to build this whole project. So yes, we can do many things. This is the beginning of Dwapara. And although Dwapara is not necessarily going to be all ease, it will be a step upward in consciousness. Well, this is a part of what Sri Yukteswar said, and it's a part of what Lord Krishna was saying in the Bhagavad Gita. That energy, that understanding was being lost at that time. He lived at, people have different ideas as to when he lived. Personally, I think it was around 700 BC when the world was sinking into what Sri Yukteswar said was Dwapara Yuga. And now that time has come up. We're out of Kali Yuga, we're in Dwapara Yuga again. And this knowledge is once again is now on the rise. Here in India, there's a very interesting thing about Indian mentality. And I have to say this not with any desire to flatter, but I have observed it in my travels around the world. I've been traveling for many, many years, in fact, since I was born. Not that I was making that observation at 6 months, but I have seen that wherever Indians have gone, in a very short time they become doctors, lawyers, people at the very top of society. There's a great deal of intelligence here, a great deal of ability. That's why you've been able to take computers and do something with them so quickly. This knowledge is going to bring India to the forefront, is already bringing India to the forefront in a very short time. America and India, my guru predicted, will someday work together to bring a path to lead the world on the path of dharma, of right material and right spiritual action and success. Now this is a very key point in the Bhagavad Gita, and I mentioned it yesterday I'm pointing to the Gita, but I meant to point to Autobiography of a Yogi, where Yogananda in that book tossed off these thoughts so lightly, if you blink you won't see them. And in the Gita, in the autobiography, he brings people to God. In the Gita, he shows people how to find God. These two books go hand in hand. But in the autobiography of a yogi, he said that thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. Very interesting thing. You can notice this sometimes in stories about when it's an unbelievable sort of thing, but somebody's standing on the roof of a tall building wanting to throw himself down, and somehow this mob insanity comes over the crowd, urging him to jump. Let's get the excitement moving. And when they get home, they think, my God, what did I do? I would never do that. But there was this madness that seized the crowd. We saw this here, or you saw it, back in the time of the partition. How people, train loads of people would come from East Bengal into West Bengal with nothing but decapitated bodies, armless corpses. Unbelievable. One little boy managed to escape by hiding under a bench, and he wasn't noticed, but he was surrounded by all these corpses. When I was lecturing in Patiala in November of 1959, I lectured in the home of Dewan Balkishan Khosla. He and his father had been the Dewan of the Maharaja of Patiala, and they had a big courtyard there. He said that during that furor, he protected many Muslims who otherwise would have boarded buses and get outside there and suddenly Sikhs would hack them to death. What is it that can cause a country of so many people, not you, not you, not you, certainly none of us, and yet so many people to become just horrible? It's a mass hysteria. There is such a thing. A friend of mine in Calcutta he was a Muslim, Hindu, but he lived in a Muslim neighborhood. And after a while, he had to go out to get food because they were running out of food. And he carried a gun. He was a hunter. And so the people of the neighborhood were afraid of him. But he got out more into the streets, and he suddenly came face to face with a friend of his who was the chief commissioner of police. And this man had a gun and was just ready to shoot him. And there was written all over his face a rage. And my friend had a gun. He said, if you shoot me, I'll shoot you. We'll both die. And this man, just with anger like this, gradually, calm down, calm down. Suddenly he saw that he was looking at a friend. He couldn't believe that he had been about to shoot a friend of his. But this is the kind of madness that takes a hold of people, that a whole people can become mad, yes. But there are other things too. Artistic beauty, inspiration, many scientific discoveries have been made simultaneously by several people at once. The discovery of spherical geometry came first to two men, one a Hungarian and one a Russian, Lobachevsky and Bolyai. And people thought they were crazy. There was only Euclidean geometry, no other was possible. But nowadays they accept this as perhaps the reality. Straight lines are only possible in limited areas because otherwise there's no such thing as a straight line. And the chief mathematician at the time admitted years later that he had had this idea himself, but was afraid that he would be condemned as a lunatic and had said nothing. But again, two people had that idea simultaneously. You know, when Charles Darwin discovered the principle of relativity, Wallace, who's been described as his arch rival, but he was working along the same line with the same discovery. If Darwin had not published when he did, a week later Wallace would have published his book, and we would have Wallacean, or whatever the word would be, evolution instead of Darwinian evolution. And in fact, it's rather unfortunate because Wallace was a spiritual man and Darwin was a materialist, but that was the age we were in. Nonetheless, it has happened again and again in science that at a certain time, these inspirations are suddenly given. I have done a lot of creative work in my life. In writing music, for example, I am extremely conscious that it's not my music. I want clearly a certain subject, but once I do, it's there. Once I've said what I'm trying to do, I don't even think about the melody. Once I've said, I want a melody that says so-and-so, the melody is there. And this has happened to me again and again. And so it is that all over the world, there are certain waves of consciousness that come. We are playthings of that in a way. And when Krishna speaks about the gunas, they're sort of eternal wanderers. We manifest sattva guna or rajoguna or tamoguna. We manifest them, we don't create them. And according to what we are open to, that is what influences us. Yogananda used to say that Satan, which is the apara prakriti, which takes everything outward, and para prakriti, which is that nature which has the Divine Mother aspect, and there's the inward side. These two, God and Satan, you might say, are pulling on both sides, but they can't influence you until you open the door. Somebody might go to that lynching party where somebody's ready to commit suicide, or everybody wants to lynch him because of some crime that he did. There's a true story of a crowd of people who rushed to a prison in France, and they wanted to kill this man. They were convinced he was an evil man, and nothing was good enough for them except blood vengeance. And the superintendent of the jail was a smart man, and he came out and he said, "Congratulations, our country is proud of you. You have manifested the will of the people, and I shall see that that will is done." And everybody clapped and went home, and the man was acquitted. He was not guilty, and so the superintendent of the jail knew that this was probably true. But these people got all excited, and in that excitement, so many things can happen. But you have to. I am quite certain that if I were there, it wouldn't have touched me. You know, there's a scientific experiment that's been conducted in psychology classes, where they've taken a line this long and another line this long. They put the long line above and the short line below. And they've had groups of 5 students. And 4 of those students have declared that this lower line, which is half the length, is the longer. In 80% of the cases, the 5th person has said, yes, the lower line is longer. You can see that it's not. The amount of influence on human consciousness it's almost pathetic. But there you have it. It's a reality. I'm sure that I would not be touched by it. I'd be one of those 20%. I'm sure most of you would be, because you've had the discrimination to come and learn about truth and not just take what your parents told you and taken it blindly. But there is this part of human nature. And the truth is that if you want to find perfection, if you want to find freedom, don't think that you can achieve it for yourself. A brother disciple of mine told me, I don't want to do everything he says. I have my own will. I want to be free in my will. I mentioned this to my guru, and he said, but he's not free. His delusion is already telling him to say that. You're not free. You need, well, I'll say it personally. You can decide for yourselves. I need help. We all need help. We need the consciousness of somebody who's higher up the mountain who can lift us up. This is a simple fact. Little animals, they're helped when they're pets. I know Dr. Lewis, Master's disciple, had a pet cat, and my guru said in his next life that cat will be a human being. Mixing with human beings helps to lift animals, and mixing with saints helps to lift people. And mix for a Shudra to be a servant in the home of a Vaishya will help to lift him. For a Vaishya to have Kshatriya customers will lift him. I'm not talking of formal caste, I'm talking of people who are by nature Shudras or Vaishyas or Kshatriyas or Brahmins, because it's really who you are, not who your parents are, that determines your nature. But mix with people of that which you can understand is higher than your own. Finally, just think what a chasm you have to leap from thinking that I am this body to suddenly realizing I am not anything. I enjoyed what Mr. Mehta, who's the head of Asta, I was talking with him, and I said to him, I'm just nobody. I was amused at his answer. He said, well, nobody's perfect, so if you're nobody, that means you're perfect. That was a clever bon mot, you might say. But the truth is that to get out of that bodiness, of being somebody, you have to be in the consciousness of somebody who is free from that. And so the Gita again and again points out to you how you are only manifesting the different qualities that you manifest, but that you could be lots of other things. In fact, as it says in the Puranas, I think it is, that Krishna said to Uddhava, you see that beetle there? That was once Indra. How Indra, the king of the gods, could fall that low? Indra, remember, is not a person. It's a post a person holds. Somebody told me, I don't know if it's true, he was full of this kind of thing. He was an Indian, and you find an awful lot of things like that in India. Anyway, the story he told me was like this, that when the Chinese were ready to invade India, the god in charge of the Chinese came to the god or angel in charge of the Indians, and he said, my boys are getting restless. And he said, I have to let them break out a little bit, but I will see that they stop at such and such a parallel. And in fact, the Chinese came to such and such a parallel, whatever it was, in the north of India, and suddenly they just turned around and went back. There's no reason for it that anybody could see. Well, I'm offering that to you as a bit of non-fact. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a very intriguing. In Italian, there is a saying, "Se non è vero è ben trovato." If it isn't true, at least it's well said. The truth is that we are the puppets, far more than we know, of our environment, of our neighborhood, of our culture, of our age, of so many things. And our job is to get out of that. And only one way can we do it, and this is again why it is entirely scientific statement when the Gita emphasizes the need for a guru. You need to have somebody who is conscious of being self-conscious and yet infinite. Only by gradually implanting his consciousness in yours can you begin gradually to appreciate and to understand and finally to be born into that new state of awareness. It's not so easy in the beginning. People say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to give up myself. But bit by bit you begin to see that, but that's freedom. I remember going up at Ananda village back in 1975 or so in Ayodhya. This is a section I live in, we called it Ayodhya. And all the people there were living in trailers, and I saw lights lit in the trailers. And I thought, a few years ago there was darkness here, and now there is light. And I thought, I did this. It was a pleasant thought. Then I thought, well, is it all that pleasant? I realized that it was also a very limiting thought, and I decided, no, I don't like that limit. It means it all has to come back to me and be weighed down my shoulders, and I just gave up that thought, and I said, no, God did it. And I have never had that thought come back to me. It has never been my thought. It comes by little degrees. In the beginning, people like to think, oh, I did it. After a while, they begin to think, what a petty thing to be saying. How much more fun to think, we all did it. Many hands make a miracle. I was at Disneyland many years ago, and there was a man and his wife in our party who we got into little boats that go on a lake surface. And underneath the boat, there is a metal rail that the boats have to follow. But you're given the illusion, because there's a fake steering wheel there, which has no traction at all, you're given the illusion that you can steer. And so we were at one part of the lake, and we saw this man across the water there, and called to him, and his wife called back, and he says, look, dear, look, they're waving. Don't bother me, I've got to keep this boat, steer this boat around those rocks. And this is such a perfect example of how this world is. So much of what happens to us we think we have to do, but It just happens. The more you can allow God to work through you, the more you find things working perfectly, and you're really only getting in the way. So bit by bit you come to appreciate that giving up the ego is not such a bad thing after all. In fact, it is your fulfillment, and this is what the whole story of the Gita is about. It is to help you to understand who and what you are, to help you to realize that you're not this little body, you're not this human being, you're not limited in time and space, and you don't have any of these gunas. You're neither good nor bad, you're nothing except you're Satchidananda. Infinite bliss. Shankaracharya said it beautifully. This is the goal of life, and we all are seeking Satchidananda. As my guru translated that into English as ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. All of us look for it. The criminal looks for it. He only defines it in wrong terms. He thinks that if he has power and money, he'll have happiness. But what he really wants is happiness. He wouldn't want power or money if he knew that it was going to make him absolutely miserable and die with cancer. But he thinks that he will. And so you go to business college and you learn how to, well, get power and money, but in a legal way. And still it's not what you really want. And all the things people look at and strive for, it's not what they want. And even when they finally get it, and this is the trouble, sattvic happiness is not true happiness yet. Sattvic happiness can be identified with having a dream home by the sea, with seagulls circling overhead and a beautiful rose-colored trellis and hummingbirds in the garden and friends coming over and chatting with you peacefully and happily every evening, and a perfectly eventless life, nothing happening except just peace and beauty and tranquility. At the end of a 10-year period, if not much sooner, I think that you would say, somebody hit me on the head to see if I'm still alive. We get bored with that kind of perfection. That's not the perfection we want. There is more than that kind of sattvic happiness. Sattvic happiness is still ego being happy. And in fact, it's very interesting to notice that that ego happiness, which becomes indolent, can sink down to tamoguna once again, laziness. There is no way out except moksha. There really isn't. And so what you've got to do is get rid of the thought even, I am happy. I just want to merge in you. And in that is all the happiness and 1,000,000 times more. All the joy you could imagine crushed into one is beginning to describe the bliss that is your true nature. Because you are that as much as anybody else has ever been. That is your destiny. And the wonderful thing today is how science and religion are coming together, because the truths of one and the truths of the other dovetail. In the end, science will be a road to salvation. The only difficulty being that science still tries to help you to understand the nature of the atom. You can never understand the nature of the atom because you aren't the atom. But you can understand the nature of that one little atom that is you. And if you can get down to your own reality and understand who and what you are, you will be one with the whole universe. This is the scientific basis of yoga. It's the scientific basis of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's the glorious promise of the Gita itself, which holds out hope for everyone. All can achieve enlightenment and salvation. Joy to you.